Hi, everybody. Jeff Gayduk here from Leisure Group Travel, and I am happy to have with me today Jim Plaunt from Bike Tour Vacations. Jim, how you doing today?
Doing fine, thanks.
Great, great. Well, it's great to have you on board. You and I interviewed a number of years ago about your bicycle tour company, and I thought it was a fascinating story. So, as I'm trying to reconnect with people as we close out 2020 and head into 2021. I thought it'd be hopefully a good opportunity to catch up with you, learn about what you've gone through this year, and as well as what you're looking forward to in 2021.
Mhm.
Great.
Perfect.
Great. So I guess to start, Jim, for those that are not familiar with the company, talk a little bit about what you do. Let's go pre-COVID. So,
Pre-COVID,
yeah.
I have a small tour business, literally and figuratively. But the group sizes are generally small, and it's just not a huge business, but it's enough to keep me busy, and
Good.
a handful of friends involved with it. Um, we, we run bicycle tours generally in the Great Lakes region. We do go out of region on occasion when it's appropriate, and that actually may be coming up again in August. Just because we can't go to Canada, I would like to go somewhere different, and we may go back to Kentucky. Um, the heart of the business is 5 or 6 or 7 day long, fully supported bike tours where we'll ride between 30 and 50 miles a day, see something along the way. And as a tour operator, I provide lodging, a fair portion of the dining, and support for the people who are out riding. A lot
Okay.
of mapping involved.
Okay. Talk a little bit about your typical passenger, and maybe it's difficult to describe who the exact person is, but what type of people go on bike tour vacations around the Great Lakes?
Um, I thought the age bump was 45 to 65. That would be the normal crowd, and it's really more like 60 to 80.
Hmm.
It's quite a bit older than I thought. A couple of reasons for that. First, we include lodging and dining, and that raises the cost, which thins the herd quite a bit. And
Okay.
that's okay. That's okay. I'm not interested in a camping tour. I There's a lot of them out there. Um, it's a whole different animal, uh, and I think I don't want this to sound wrong, but there's a lot more competition there, much
Yeah.
more difficult to keep going.
Yep.
So I've written this business plan, and we focus on the Great Lakes because I grew up in Minnesota. I've lived in Michigan 30 years. The water's all around here. I study the boats, I study the lakes, pay attention to uh, all the news on ecology and what's happening there. Very important for when we're somewhere to be able to say, hey, this is better than it was 20 years ago because of XYZ or whatever it is.
Nice.
Um, so we make a real market in knowing where we are here. Um,
So, how do you find passengers typically? Where are people coming to find you? I'm sure a bit through your website and such, but talk a little bit about your acquisition strategy and how people find you and how you cultivate customers.
so for years, and it's changed because of COVID for last year and for this year, there are no consumer shows. I used to go to a handful of them. Most of them were bicycle oriented, and they have kind of they're on hiatus, as you can understand.
Mm.
Um, I do have a virtual booth at a show in Iowa that is on the same day that they announced the trail route for Ragbrai. And this has historically been a big show with 4 or 5 thousand cyclists walking through a convention floor. And we've been at that. And there is no convention floor. So it's a virtual event. I don't know how it's going to be. I have to make up some videos to have at the booth, what happens on a tour, or take a look at this tour. And these will be still photos mostly. There's some video for it, but so we have gone to shows like that. I am a member of a couple local bicycle groups. The Ann Arbor Bike Touring Society is a big group. I don't get a lot of business from them, but I do get some great background. And there's another group in Farmington Hills, Michigan, the Center for Active Adults. And it's just people who go on when I say funny little rides, they'll go 10 or 15 miles, and they're doing all the roads in a subdivision. So when you look at the map, when they're done, it's like somebody dropped a piece of spaghetti and they get all the roads. remarkable. This little tiny group, and I ride with them and I post my mileage, hit 50,000 miles this year,
Holy
all
cow.
in small groups of 2 or 3 or 4 people to be COVID compliant. It's just a ton of activity. And they really represent to me a great place for growth um, in this business, as opposed to the Ann Arbor. The Ann Arbor group is all people who are well-established cyclists and don't need me.
Okay.
But the Farmington group, newer to this, I've had a handful of them on tour. Actually, I filled up a tour. I have one tour that is virtually sold out for this coming season. And I say virtually, we can fudge but one of the limiters, it's the river towns on the Mississippi. We're going from Minneapolis down into Iowa, and then we bus people back.
Cool.
The limiting factor is the bus, because we need every other seat empty. So I have a 56 passenger bus, and we've got 22 or so guests right now. We're there. I don't need to jam them in like sardines. That's just not.
Yeah, interesting. You talk about the Farmington group. They're running the similar routes as like a UPS or an Amazon driver. You might want to get some saddlebags for their bicycles. They can make a little side hustle money on their way around the neighborhoods.
Yep.
And you mentioned Ragbrai, which I think it's a really interesting story for those in the audience that are not familiar with that. Can you just give a brief overview of what Ragbrai is and what their history is? Because I know you're connected with those guys.
Yep. Ragbrai is one of the famous rides in the country. It's the first major across the state ride. The acronym Ragbrai stands for Reader's Annual Great Bike Ride Across Iowa, I think.
Okay.
And last year they had some political issue, and the group split in two, and then they got froze out by the virus. So they're both those groups are trying to come back. It's been a marvelous thing for the bicycle tour industry when you have a big group like that, and they'll get 10,000 people spending 6 or 7 days riding across Iowa. They never do the same route twice.
Mm-hmm.
They probably have repeated sections of it, but it changes every year. All the small towns in Iowa say, pick me. They want the route to come through town because it's money. Whether the Lions Club is selling hot dogs, or somebody set up a beer tent, or they're selling apple pie, whatever, or corn on the cob, they all want the ride to come through because it's a big deal. It's a bit of a party ride. They've got some great long-term, what's the word here? They have defined their mission, and they've got all these people who buy into it. So their repeat customer number is huge.
Yeah, I mean that's just a phenomenal number for Iowa, which is kind of hard to get to. Do any other states that you're aware of do anything similar to what Iowa does?
There's no shortage of bike rides. You can go to almost any state and find a big event, big being 200 people or more. There's a handful that are in league with Ragbrai. Or maybe we'll just call that over 1,000 people. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of logistics.
Mm-hmm.
And what Ragbrai has given to small operators like me is really the background and the training to understand how to make this work. My business liability insurance is a product that somebody made up for Ragbrai. It's aimed at bicycle tour operators. So there's some advantages to my guests for coming along because of the insurance. They understand what we're doing, and they offer some coverages which are generally excluded by other general liability companies. It's odd that way. And then there's a whole slew of other services. There's people whose only business is to set up tents and bring sleeping bags. So if you go on one of these tours, you pay them $250, and every night there's a tent with a inflated bed and a fresh towel for you. I don't know, a sleeping bag if you need it, or so.
So you just show up with your bike and tons
and
of
ride.
energy, and you're able to do that. I find that fascinating, and what a great breeding ground, as you mentioned. Speaking of which, this summer I went to my local bike store. My son had a problem with his wheel, so I went in there to get it repaired, and it was like somebody stole every bicycle out of the bike shop. They were just gone. And I asked if they were moving. They said, nope, it's been one of those years where everybody's decided they want to ride on a bike. Um, that's got to be good for the industry long term and short term.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. And we've seen that too. And everybody involved has learned a different way to operate, from no contact, touchless, drop your bike off for service, pick it up when they text you that's ready. Um,
Yep.
the whole process of buying a bike has changed. And I guess we need to understand that everyone's trying to adapt to the unknown.
Hmm. Well, you would hope that those that did secure bikes this year, commitment to physical fitness, getting out more, that's got to be just overall, you get tired of riding around your neighborhood, like the group you mentioned earlier. So eventually you're going to want to take that show on the road. And if you don't have the mechanics of doing it on your own, then a company like yourself should benefit from that, I would think.
I'd hope so.
Good, good.
That's
Go ahead.
Well, that's my expectation. I think there's a lot of pent up demand from 2020. People just didn't get to go anywhere, and they're ready to go. They want to go now.
Okay. Um, did you have anything ship in 2020, or was your season obliterated?
It started out great, and by the end of February, we were on track to top last 2019, which was our biggest year to date. And then everything, it just went to hell in a handbasket in March. Not
Okay.
as just and I think I was out in front of it. You have been reading my blog posts, I know.
Hmm.
And I had a whole series this year on COVID. And it started off with, in the middle of April, what in the world happened? How did we get here? And then it went on to interview with some doctors and some other things, of what's going on. I recognized early on, for some reason, that there was a lot of bad publicity for some airlines who were being really stingy in their return policies or their change policies. And I decided that was not for me. And so I, for all my guests who had registered by that point, I said, we're not collecting any more money until we know that we're going. And um, whatever happens, if you can't go because of COVID, we'll get a full refund. So as it turns out, everybody who registered early had, by the time their next payment was due, which was the 1st of June, they all said, I'd like not to go. And so that was a painful process, but I guess it was one that I had to do for my own peace of mind.
Sure.
They can't go, they shouldn't be penalized because they can't go.
Yeah.
These are unknowns that we don't know about. I did have 3 tours. I kept 2 tours active on the website as long as I could. And that really folded down to 1. There was no point to doing a tour in Minnesota and a tour in Michigan. We wound up with, I think, 8 or 9 guests for my Ride to Pictured Rocks the first week of August. And then about the middle of June, I got a call from a fellow who represented an affinity group, a group of like-minded people.
Mhm.
They raise money for climate change issues.
Oh, cool.
And so their deal is, if they said, we'd like to have a small tour. You're kind of close to where most of our people are. What can we do? And I said, well, we can do any of the tours, but I'd really like to do the Pictured Rocks with you again, beginning on the day after the first tour ends. And it turned out that worked out well. They, how much is it? I gave them a price. They told their people they have to raise X amount of money and they can go on the tour for free. Was a wonderful deal. And we had more people on that tour than on the first tour.
Really?
Yeah, and back-to-back tours here.
So they used the tour as a fundraiser to get people to go out and raise money, and if they
Yes.
hit a certain threshold, the trip was free.
Correct.
Wow.
And then I'm only dealing with one party, and they're dealing with a dozen people. It was great. It was from a management standpoint, look at this, and that's carried over to this year. But I was going to say something else about them. Oh, there was a third tour. In the middle of July, somebody called up, someone from Chicago, and he said, I'm dying. I have to get out of town. There's 4 of us. What can you do? And I said, the only thing I can do this Pictured Rocks tour again, beginning on the day after the second one ends. So I did the same tour 3 weeks in a row. You can imagine how good that is for the budget.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and just from the standpoint of knowing how the pace is going to run, any
Yes.
potential hiccups, if the, room 27 in the hotel you use is not up to par, you can handle that by the second time around. That's real smart business.
Well, and interesting, we did find out, we're in pretty rural territory in the UP, in the Upper Peninsula. And there's a town, Grand Marais, which is if you don't know where it is and you wind up there, you're clearly way more than lost. It's at the east end of the Pictured Rocks. 350 people is the population. That's not a population base to have any hotels or restaurants.
No.
I mean, and there are a handful. The one that I like to use, and she does a great job. The people on the private tour said, can you share with me all the COVID policies of your hotels? And they referenced one of the hotels on the trip, said, we went to look at this one, and he's got a great policy. So I took it, printed it, and I called him. I said, this is good. Can I use it with the other groups? He said, fine. So I sent an email to each of the other hotels on the trip, and I said, please send me your COVID policy. If you don't have one, take a look at this. Maybe it's something you can use, but I have guests who want to be assured that I've done my job in vetting all the hotels, and this is one of those things. Well, the gal in Grand Marais just got upset. She had a panic attack, and she wound up canceling our stays there.
Mm.
And this is like 2 weeks out. And so what that did, it forced us into the other hotels, which, you can pay too much and you can pay too little. And I really hate to pay too little. It just scares me. And there's nowhere else to be. So we managed to get through. I'm trying not to laugh at one of the stories that I can't repeat here. And one of the places we will not be back, and there's no point to,
Sure. Yeah. Live and learn, I guess. But obviously, yeah. I would hope that travelers would give you a little bit of a mulligan. Everybody's dealing with very unprecedented circumstances.
Right. Yeah. So we made it through okay. We made it through just fine.
So, you talked about some different group size. You got 22, 8 or 9, 4 or 5. What's sort of an ideal group size for a bike tour, you think? And, where do you get to a point where you feel you're really stretching the capacity?
So I look at on how many staff we can have, and it's the number is either 2 staff or 4 staff. And if there's 2 staff, there's 1 vehicle and 1 rider on the ground. And if it's 4, it's double that. There's 2 vehicles and 2 on the ground. In a perfect world, we would have 16 to 20 guests on a tour. Okay. And 4 staff. And then we have a big U-Haul truck for luggage and stuff, and my van for the SAG, just for the runaround stuff. And
gotcha.
We've had as many as, we have a weekend tour on the Calhaven Trail, runs from Kalamazoo to South Haven and back. We've had 47 people on that.
Okay.
That's a different creature. That's just a different.
Yeah. I kind of get that. So let's talk a little bit about 2021. Obviously, we get our crystal ball out. There's a lot of factors at play here. What's your early indication, any sort of prognosis for how 21 is going to roll out?
Well, today I'm ahead of last year's head count by the same date.
Okay.
I have more guests today than I did last year on this day,
okay,
which is a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
The busy booking season is really January, February. I think people are just itching to get out the door, and that's not a reason just to go. You need to understand. And I refer back to a blog post I just sent out the other day. I don't know if you read it. It was about snowbird travel.
Oh yeah.
And I wrote it because I'm supposed to be going to Arizona for 6 weeks. Well, it's with driving. We're driving, bringing bikes with, and is it safe?
Yeah.
So, and I could not find a single source. We always want somebody to confirm the opinion that we've got about this. And if you want to find a yes answer, you just ask the travel bureaus.
Yeah.
Come on, that's great. You'll be fine.
Sure.
That's not reasonable, because that flies in the face of what we see in the news about the bad part of the pandemic. And I did not come to a conclusion. I can't tell people it's safe or it's not safe. I can tell you these are the things that I look at to minimize risk.
Sure, and that's all you really can do,
Yes.
at a certain point. And we've gotten really past the level where we can control this and even be able to forecast, how things are going to be. I know in our office, we were joking around the other day, we thought this was going to last a couple of months, and here we're at, just basically the season obliterated for many people. So you only hope for better conditions coming out, and maybe the fact that people have missed so much travel, missed spending time with people they care about and share common interests with, will be that sort of flood back to the marketplace when it is indeed safe to travel again. So, any way you see your business changing going forward? Do you think you can go back to kind of where you were normal? Can it be bigger, or do you want it to be bigger?
Well, I do want it to be bigger. It won't be normal this year. We're operating, and I believe it's clear on all of my tour descriptions, we're operating under the pandemic guidelines that we used this past season.
Okay.
So our guests are going to be asked to wear a mask when they're off the bicycle, and we're not eating in restaurants unless we have a private dining room. This is a lot of al fresco or carry-out dining, which affects where we stay, because sometimes you can get a motel or a place that's got a cabin on the property, which gives us a kitchen kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I would love to get back to normal. There are so many things missing. You can't hug anybody. You can't shake hands. In the past, we've gone to many places where we have live music on every tour, just by happenstance. And some of we've had sing-alongs. Not this year, not coming up. I mean,
Yeah.
and then I look at, we used to pass on the first big tour we had years ago, 2012, we were somewhere in the UP, and everybody was at the table, and we'd had dinner, and it was kind of slowing down, and people were about nodding off. And I said to the waitress, there were 16 of us at the table. I said, I want you to bring 16 plates and 8 desserts and some extra spoons and forks, and set them down every other person. And then when I say go, we're going to pass these around the table, and everybody can have a taste of everything.
Okay.
And the decibel level in the restaurant went up by about a factor of 4 as soon as we started eating. It was remarkable. We'll never do that again. That isn't going to happen.
No, not anytime soon. Yeah.
And it was such a memorable thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. Any advice to any of your colleagues that are trying to get themselves back into the marketplace? I know, we've seen a lot of people that just shuttered their operations, and I think there is still a bit of like, I don't know what's next. What's been keeping you moving?
I have to do something. and I could be retired. I don't have to do this, but I want to do this. It's a lot of fun, and there's a reasonable investment of time in what we're doing. When we're out there and things are going well, it's great fun. And even when they're not going well, it's a challenge, and it's enjoyable. I am working with 2 people who are, in the long view, they are kind of tour partners. It means that they get paid differently. they get a share of any tour that they're on. The hope is that someday they'll say, well, here's an offer for the business.
Okay. Okay.
And you can't do that when you need to. You have to do that before you need to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of the long view. I'm content to do this for a while. I think somebody I live with would like to see that there's an end.
Exit strategy. Yes. Yeah.
So it's okay. It's just fine.
Okay.
And how do you sell a tiny business? I mean, we're not talking a lot of money. We're
Sure.
just now.
Sure. Somebody who has a similar passion.
Exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's
Okay.
right.
Good. Well, Jim, it was great catching up with you. Good to see you again, even though it's over Zoom. I look forward to our next in-person meeting. It's been a while, but I'm sure that day is coming sooner than we both know. So appreciate your insight today, and I'm happy you got a few pieces of business out in 2020. But it looks as though you're going to be climbing that hill again in 2021.
Yep.
Okay. Great. Thanks again.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
All right. Take care.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Bye-bye.